Hi, good morning. I'm really excited to be discussing this topic today. So let's dive in. I have quite a lot of content to cover. As always, feel free to respond with questions in the chat box and I will answer them as we move along. Okay, so we all start out the same and we all grow old, unfortunately or fortunately. Nearly everyone knows someone or knows someone who suffers from dementia. The scope of the impact of dementia on our society is very broad. Many people are often not prepared for the effects of this disease on their loved ones and families. It can be expensive and very stressful to deal with a dementia diagnosis. So let's start out by defining dementia. What is dementia? It's not a specific disease. It's an overall term that describes a wide range of symptoms that are associated with a decline in memory or other thinking skills that is severe enough to reduce a person's ability to perform everyday activities. Alzheimer's disease is perhaps one of the most well-known dementias. It accounts for 60 to 80% of cases. Vascular dementia, which can occur after a stroke, is the second most common dementia type. There are also many other conditions that can cause symptoms of dementia, including some that are reversible, such as thyroid problems and vitamin deficiencies, or even hormonal deficiencies. So, while symptoms of dementia can vary greatly, at least two of the following core mental functions must be significantly impaired to be considered dementia: memory, communication, and language, ability to focus and pay attention, reasoning and judgment, visual perception. People with dementia have problems with short-term memory, keeping track of a purse or wallet, paying bills, planning and preparing meals, remembering appointments, or even traveling out of the neighborhood. Many dementias are progressive, meaning the symptoms such as loss of memory, any one of those up there you see, communication and language difficulties, they might start out slowly and gradually they will get worse and they'll start to experience problems with all the above. If you or a loved one is experiencing memory difficulties or other changes in thinking skills, definitely don't ignore them. See a doctor as soon as you can to determine the cause. It may be something reversible. Professional evaluation may detect a treatable condition, and even if symptoms are suggesting dementia, early diagnosis allows a person to get the maximum benefit from available treatments and provides an opportunity to volunteer even for clinical trials or studies. It also provides time to plan for the future. Causes of dementia, again, a little bit more in depth. Dementia is caused by damage to brain cells. This damage interferes with the ability of brain cells to communicate with each other. When brain cells cannot communicate normally, you suffer changes in thinking, behavior, feelings, reasoning and judgment, visual perception, and so forth. The brain has many distinct regions, each of which is responsible for different functions. For example, memory, judgment, and movement. And when cells in a particular region are damaged, that region cannot carry out its functions normally. All of this, again, was taken from Alzheimer's.org, which has excellent, easy to understand medical presentations about Alzheimer's and dementia spectrum diseases. Really good information on there, and that's where I got this medical stuff from. So, here are some quick facts and figures to give you a scope of this disease and the state of dementia in the U.S. Again, this is also from the Alzheimer's Association 2016 Special Report on the Personal Financial Impact of Alzheimer's on Families and from the Aging Demographics and Memory Study. That's definitely a long-titled study. 1 in 9 people aged 65 and older has Alzheimer's disease. 14% of people age 71 and older have dementia. That's from a 2000 study. So, as you might have anticipated, that number is growing and is definitely larger today in 2017 than it was in 2007. Also, it's important to understand that Alzheimer's and dementia are underreported. people often may not know or want to know why they are experiencing difficulty with memory and other cognitive skills. Sometimes it's just too overwhelming and they feel that it's better to not know. However, their relatives will inevitably be coming to the library, needing help, dealing with some problems that are related to dementia, and that's where you will probably become involved. So, moving on, as many of you know, Florida is a state that draws a significant number of retirees. As of October 2016, there are 4.9 million seniors that call Florida home. With more than 5 million residents aged 60 and over, Florida leads the nation with the highest population of seniors and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. This info was taken from the Elder Update, a publication by Elder Affairs in Tallahassee. It's a great publication. My grandmother actually introduced me to it. So it's great. You could Google their website and start receiving the publication if you want to. So therefore, the number of dementia sufferers in Florida is quite large compared to other states. So that definitely makes this a topic for Florida librarians to be well versed in, because it's inevitable that this patron base will come into your library. There are a lot of medical facilities in Florida that treat dementia patients, and there are also a lot of support groups to help those affected by dementia. This webinar will explore Florida resources for dementia and their families and caregivers, and I hope to provide you with a toolkit of dementia resources for Florida librarians. And I hope I'm not speaking too fast. Again, I'm looking at the chat box quite frequently, so feel free to ask me to repeat anything. I have a tendency to speak quite fast when I am nervous. Okay, so public librarians and librarians in general need to have a toolkit for dementia sufferers. I think librarians can be most helpful when they have knowledge of local programs, knowledge of some online resources, or find popular forms that those affected by dementia are most likely to need and ask you for. Additionally, if your library is offering a program that serves seniors that dementia sufferers are likely to participate in, it's necessary to make sure that your program follows the appropriate standards for programming for dementia sufferers. ALA, American Library Association, and other international library organizations have publications and recommendations on this, and we'll definitely get to that later on in the presentation. There's definitely a lot out there, so this presentation will cover what I think are the most helpful local programs, online resources, and the most commonly needed forms. So starting with statewide resources, it's important to have some knowledge of where statewide resources are out there on the web. I've included what I think are the best ones, the resource links you see there, and started with the Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center. They have an amazing resource library. We'll see that on the next slide. Then I've got the Florida Department of Elder Affairs. They are the primary state agency administering human service programs to benefit Florida's elders. And under that general umbrella, of course, are those who suffer from dementia. Another very important link is the link to the Office of Public Guardian. The Office of Public and Professional Guardians, which is housed within the Department of Elder Affairs, appoints local public guardian offices as directed by statute to provide guardianship services to persons who do not have adequate income or assets to afford a private guardian, and if there's no willing family or friend to serve. The office, which contracts with 17 local offices of public guardianship throughout Florida, is also responsible for the registration and education of professional guardians. So it's just helpful to know where that lives on the web. And there's also Florida Hospice and Palliative, it's a hard word for me to say, Palliative Care Association, and a link to report elder abuse, something that kind of makes you just feel sick inside when you read about. Unfortunately, it does happen, and it's helpful to know where there is a recourse to deal with that. And the Senior Resource Alliance is also a very important link. So let's dive into these links. Oh my goodness. One moment. Okay, didn't mean to open that up, but they are workable hyperlinks. Okay, there we go. So first link, the Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center, they have an excellent caregiver resource library. And as you see, tons of information. Let's see. So they also have a main office in Orlando, so they kind of serve the Central Florida region and the surrounding counties, but any patron that you get that comes in, they're just stressed out, their role is primarily caregiver, this is a great resource to give them. They can read about things and sort of come to grips maybe with what's happening, the changes that they see a loved one going through. So it's a great link to have, and if they happen to be residing in Central Florida, there will be more localized resources for them. Okay, this is the Department of Elder Affairs, and you'll see the little arrow for services in my area. If you click that, you will be brought to this page, and then you could select your county and proceed. It's very helpful to be able to send a patron to the right agency. So I clicked on Brevard, where I live, and there are a list of multiple agencies and their descriptions. So a lot of times, Hurricane Matthew, for example, if you had a patron, they were elderly and they, needed help with getting weatherized or things to do with the weather and they're economically disadvantaged, that's a lot of our citizens here, then you probably could find some agencies to refer them to or provide them with that information by utilizing these links. Each county has a CARES office, and that stands for Comprehensive Assessment and Review for Long-Term Care Services. So each county has the CARES office and it serves their local population, and it's Florida's federally mandated pre-admission screening program for nursing home applicants. A registered nurse and/or assessor performs client assessments. Then a physician or registered nurse would review each application to determine the level of care that is appropriate for the applicant. The assessment identifies long-term care needs and establishes the appropriate level of care, whether it's nursing facility care, home health aid visits, or even an assisted living facility. They recommend the least restrictive and most appropriate placement. The CARES program also covers Medicaid reimbursement for nursing facility placement, just a whole host of health insurance related issues, Medicaid related issues, and a CARES assessment is mandatory if a private pay applicant is suspected of having an intellectual disability or mental illness. Any person or family member can initiate a CARES assessment by applying for the Medicaid Institutional Care Program. So again, this is very technical in-depth stuff, but it is helpful to know where it lives at on the web. Some of you may have or host a program in your library called Shine. We have that here in Brevard, and definitely here locally at DeGroodt where I work. And the individual uses our study room, they book it, they come in, they meet with seniors. Some of them are dementia sufferers, some of them are spouses of dementia sufferers, and they just sort of walk them through the health insurance aspects of it, and they definitely are dealing with all of the CARES issues, and they kind of function as a liaison to help them. I have not dealt too directly with Department of Elder Affairs, researching the website with a patron, but it is helpful to know where it's at and where it lives at on the web, and just to kind of know what the people in Shine are are doing for your patrons. It's good to know. But it is very specialized. Okay, so moving along, and again, it is sad to think about elder abuse being an issue, but it is, and there is information out there on where you can go to report it. Florida has a long-term care ombudsman program, so if you have concerns about the quality of life for your loved one and they are residing in a long-term care facility, there are resources available for you. The long-term ombudsman program also lists other state government organizations that may be able to assist you. So it's helpful to provide this information for your patrons as well. Senior Resource Alliance. This is a great web resource. It's very comprehensive, and it even provides links to national resources for dementia caregivers. So Florida is a state that has a lot of seasonal residents, so that's helpful. If you get a patron that is seeking information on finding some support for themselves or their other relatives, because as you can imagine and know, it can be very draining to provide long-term care for someone that is ill, it's helpful to know where these websites are. Senior Resource Alliance is a great website to know. You can find the links and contact info of other nonprofit organizations. For example, the organization Share the Care, a nonprofit that provides services to support family caregivers in Orange and Seminole counties. It also includes in-home respite care and adult daycare is on there. They also provide respite care workers to serve as companions while the primary caregiver rests. They also offer overnight care, counseling, medical supplies, support groups, caregiver training. I'm not sure what the waiting lists are for these services, and I'm not sure if it's like legal aid where income is a qualifying factor for services, but knowing where this information is very helpful. I actually have used this website and provided information on it for a patron. Here in Brevard, we have Aging Matters, and you'll see them on there. If you scroll down, you'll see them. And they are a private nonprofit that's dedicated to helping seniors enjoy happy, healthy, and secure lives, and to develop solutions to community problems and promote and maintain independence and maximize the quality of life for citizens of Brevard, particularly the elderly and disabled adults. They work a lot with supporting the families of those who provide long-term care to dementia sufferers. So Senior Alliance is great for national organizations and local organizations that support those who care for someone with dementia. Okay, now, of course, every time there is a dementia diagnosis, there are usually some legal issues that arise out of it, and people will often come to the reference desk and their spouse or their mother or someone's been put in an assisted living facility, and all of a sudden they've got to worry about things like power of attorney healthcare decision, not a power of attorney form. I need to be appointed guardian of something. So those are just some common legal issues that can arise out of a dementia diagnosis. So now that we've reviewed the most useful web links, and again, there's so much out there, I hope I've consolidated the main ones, the most useful ones for you. So let's talk about some of the common legal issues that will arise out of this and where you can find these forms and information. Let me check the chat really quick to make sure I haven't. Okay. Just checking to make sure I haven't missed any questions. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's define these terms. Power of attorney. This gives someone else the authority to act for you with regard to legal decisions and your assets. One quick distinction that's helpful to know is that a durable power of attorney allows you to name an agent who can deal with your finances, contracts, and assets as if he or she were you. It's not restricted to times when you are incapacitated. People like using this form because it's helpful to avoid appointing a guardian and going through that long process. But there are risks with using a durable power of attorney. Powers of attorney must be drafted by an attorney. I don't know if anyone has ever approached you asking for a power of attorney form, but they're kind of hard to find. If you did a Google search for one, you'd probably find some sketchy links that you click on it and then, oh, it's not free, I actually have to pay, and it looks weird, and then now all these pop-ups are coming on my screen. So they're just not really out there. Florida Bar's website explains that a power of attorney is an important and powerful legal document since it is authority for someone to act in someone else's legal capacity, and they definitely recommend that it should be drawn by a lawyer to meet the person's specific circumstances. Pre-printed forms fail to provide the protection desired usually, and you can certainly let the patron know that if you run a Google search for quote power of attorney or Florida power of attorney, you'll get all kinds of results, and some of them are websites where you have to pay for the form. A lot of them are just, you'll end up getting spam and other unwanted advertisements. I know we've probably experienced that when we try to find them. So that's power of attorney. Just tell them, you're not going to find a general form out there. I'll get to the library books that do have some books in our collection that may have some basic power of attorney forms. We'll discuss that in a few slides. But okay, power of attorney for healthcare. This one is a power of attorney form that gives your agent power to speak for you on healthcare matters only and make decisions for you in healthcare matters only. Sometimes people will have two separate powers of attorney and two different relatives or friends representing them in different capacities. So they might have a power of attorney for healthcare and then have their spouse appointed for that, and then also have maybe a son or daughter appointed power of attorney for financial matters. So as you can see, the power of attorney forms are very specific and very important and need to be drafted by a licensed attorney. Living wills, documents that set your preferences for certain life-sustaining medical treatments, such as cardiac resuscitation, feeding tubes, mechanical respirations, and other life support measures. Some people may wish to forego receiving these life support measures in the event of a terminal illness or certain catastrophic injury, or if their dementia or illness has progressed to the point that they just don't want to be subjected to continued medical care. Standard will, it's what most people would think of when they hear the term will, governs disposition of property and assets. The standard will not address healthcare issues, so that's why we have those other forms. Living trust, sometimes they may call it an inter vivos trust or a revocable trust. That's a written legal document through which your assets are placed into a trust for your benefit during your lifetime and then transferred to designated beneficiaries at your death by your chosen representative, who is called a successor trustee. And I'm moving very fast because I just want to get through this really detailed stuff. Guardianship, conservatorship. If someone can no longer make his or her own decisions financially and with regards to health care, someone else may have to become the person's guardian. Some states call the guardian a conservator. Guardian is appointed by the court to make decisions about the person's care and property. Usually a relative will file a petition with a local court to be appointed guardian once it's clear that the individual is incapacitated, and the courts will grant it. Sometimes relatives squabble about money and property, and then the court will appoint a guardian based on priority of relatives. And I won't go too much further into depth with that. It can get very situational and very technical. In Florida, if an incapacitated person, a dementia sufferer, someone who's had, they're in the later stages of dementia, they have not named a healthcare surrogate, certain people may be able to make decisions for him, so he would need to go to court, and, the court would need to get involved. An affidavit of healthcare proxy can be made by the person who is highest on the list of those individuals. So let's say, you had a spouse or a parent or a sibling, and they were in the later stages of dementia. They were pretty bad off, definitely incapacitated. Nothing has gone to court. You could probably get an affidavit of healthcare proxy, and you could use that affidavit to let the person's healthcare providers know that he or she wishes to act as the relative's proxy with regard to those decisions. So as you can see, a little forethought and planning can definitely save you and your relatives a lot of trouble and expense, and allow everyone to concentrate on making decisions on the best type of care the person can get rather than just fighting over who's in charge. But anyways, those are the most common legal issues that will arise out of a dementia diagnosis, and we will go into where we can find information on these. We've hit that. Okay. Okay. Florida Bar, always a great place to start for that. So, advanced directives. So sometimes people will, and I actually received this reference question, they'll come up to the desk and they want advanced directives. They don't know what it really means. They've heard the term from probably a physician or maybe an attorney. What they really want are the legal documents that we just discussed that affect how you want medical decisions made should you not be able to make them yourself. And again, the Florida Bar is a great website to start with when they need information on this. You can refer someone to this website and you can be confident that it's not some for-profit online scam. And believe me, there is a lot out there with regard to wills and legal forms that really is just like a spam trap. The American Bar Association toolkit is also on here. You'll see it right there, ABA Advanced Healthcare Directives Toolkit. And I have used this. As we discussed, to download, so they, you cannot provide the patron, they will have to have an attorney draft it. So if you click that link, it will open up and you will at least be able to find some decent forms, living will, designation of healthcare surrogate, designation of healthcare surrogate for minor, donor form, and so forth. So there are some healthcare forms out there that are free. You can download them, but they are not a power of attorney form with regards to financial decision. These just cover the ability for someone to make decisions on healthcare. Okay, sorry, keep losing you. You can hear me. Okay, good. So these forms are very popular. We've had to look them up several times. So it's really helpful to know where they are located for a patron. And when you're using the Florida Bar Association website, you know that it's definitely a legitimate website and you're not giving them some sketchy form. Okay, do not resuscitate order. I've actually been asked for this only once, but I had to Google search and eventually I found it. So this is available on the Florida Department of Health website. The DNOR, do not resuscitate order, is a form that will ensure that you are not resuscitated in the event of a respiratory or cardiac arrest. And again, someone's mother was going in the hospital. She was pretty bad off, and they were just trying to collect all these things, and couldn't give them the power of attorney. But I did find some other forms, and this was one of them. Some hospitals have them also in their administrative offices for people, but it's helpful to know where they are on the web. And it's a good thing to have in your advanced directives, because a lot of people do not wish to be kept alive beyond what they feel is a standard of quality of life. And again, I've only had one patron ask for it, but it's good to know where it is online. Okay. And the affidavit for healthcare proxy. I just wanted to mention, if you just run a Google search with the keywords Florida affidavit of healthcare proxy, you would get several results that will literally open up to this form when you click on them. I was just going to screenshot the website where the affidavit's found, but the results are the form itself, so I thought I'd just share this with you to show you how it looks if you did a Google search for that. So you could just run a keyword search for a patron who needed that form. FloridaLawHelp.org is also a good resource for dementia and senior legal issues. I talked about this website in my legal resources webinar back in August, and love this website. I use it here and there. There is a special section for seniors here that is particularly helpful. So as you can probably see and gather by now, you probably have been asked or answering or attempting to answer reference questions that are coming from a dementia diagnosis, and you might not know it. The patron might not be as forthcoming to tell you why they need, a living will, or why they're trying to find a power of attorney. A lot of times people may be embarrassed, but dementia is so widespread, it definitely affects us all. So it's helpful to know where some common forms and legal information can be found. So if you get a patron who really wants a power of attorney form and they cannot afford an attorney, you can always do a catalog search. Let me skip ahead. That's just more of what Florida law has on their site. Okay, so back to the power of attorney form, because this one I always get asked for one reason or another. Again, if you get someone, they say, I can't afford an attorney, I know that there's not really a form out there, but I just can't do it. You could, of course, always do a catalog search and see what books your library has. Keep in mind that providing a legal book like one of these publications here, Power of Attorney Handbook, and so forth, is better than just a free form off the internet, one of those sketchy forms. Again, the forms in here may be too general for what the patron needs. They may not be state specific, and you can certainly provide the patron with that disclaimer when showing them the book, but at least you won't clog your computer up with spam, and you can offer them what you've got. But again, you really want to stress that any kind of power of attorney for financial decisions, they really need to have an attorney drafted. And you can always recommend them to legal aid. We'll get to another slide where I have some, here we go, actually it's the next one, how to find a lawyer. There you go. So people that are in the situation where free and reduced legal aid programs are necessary, you can provide them these links. The Alzheimer's Association has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline where they will help people get connected with appropriate legal resources, or legal professionals, I should say. Okay, let me pause just a moment. I have a question. Okay. Are there questions that reference staff should be warned not to ask for reasons of privacy or whatever other reasons there might be? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Not really, but there are things that you shouldn't say. Not for reasons of privacy, but for reasons of liability. For example, with the power of attorney form, those kind of things you have to be very careful with. And again, going back to the forms that were in those books, like let's say your library has in the collection, power of attorney form book. You can certainly provide that book to them, but you also should give them a disclaimer, Emily, that the forms here are general. They might not be Florida specific. This is kind of just a starting point so that you could consult with an attorney with a little bit more background knowledge yourself. But as far as questions go, I cannot think of any that would be an invasion of privacy. It's more about the responses that the librarian gives, that you don't want to create a liability by giving bad information or by trying to give legal advice. So here on this slide, this is what I would do. If you're ever in doubt, always refer them to the appropriate agency if you can. Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Association Community Resource Finder. That link there will help you find a legal expert in your area. Elder Care Locator. They have a number and a website, and lawhelp.org. Okay. So, my grandmother actually told me that I needed to add this info in. Her sister, which would be, I guess, my great aunt, she was about 2 or 3 years ago, she had to go into a assisted living facility due to dementia. And my grandmother was scrambling trying to help her, and she was listening to the radio one day and came across a program called Helping Seniors. Has a really colorful DJ. His name is Joe Steckler, and people can call in. Somehow, as she was listening to it, somehow she got his contact info. She had local resources, or get her sister in the right facility, and just how Medicaid works with them. And I'm not really sure what all, but some stuff along those lines. And he was an awesome resource. So, if you have patrons that are caring for a relative with dementia, or they themselves have it, although I think it's less likely that people would admit it, it has such a stigma. But Helping Seniors is a great program. There's also Senior Voice America, and those are great radio stations. Even if you just listen to them, they talk about local topics, things in the area that help people with dementia. It's nice to know that you're just not alone, that that population is out there. So there's the web address for them, and the radio station. They have FM and AM. So Helping Seniors and Senior Voice America. I actually recommended Helping Seniors for a lady here, and she's like, "Oh, it's so great! I love listening to it, and it's really good. I never knew it existed." So glad my grandmother told me about that. Had to include it. Okay, so the Alzheimer's Association publishes an information pamphlet about legal plans and assisting a person with dementia in planning for the future. I think that it's better to take a proactive stance, obviously, when dealing with this disease, and involve the dementia sufferer in the necessary legal things like power of attorney, who they want to help them with decisions, and what their preferences are for long-term care, and making arrangements for finances and property. I like the quote from the Alzheimer's Association: "The sooner planning begins after a dementia diagnosis, the more likely is that person with dementia will be able to participate." And of course, we all know that nobody wants to feel marginalized from family or friends. Losing one's sense of self is hard enough. So now we move on to more of the library piece. I'm going to pause for a moment, get a drink of water. Okay, so let's see. So knowing what we know about dementia and understanding some of the legal issues that can arise and some of the questions you might get, that behind those questions is a dementia diagnosis is driving the person to find this information. Another piece of the pie, so to speak, or puzzle, where librarians and libraries come in, are library programs. The International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, IFLA, is the leading international body representing the interests of library and information services and their users. It's the global voice of the library and information profession. IFLA has published guidelines for library services to persons with dementia. The purpose of the guidelines publication is to raise awareness in libraries throughout the world among library professionals, caregivers, public policymakers, as well as among families and friends of those suffering from dementia. They want to raise awareness that many types of library services and materials can help stimulate the memory while providing pleasure and entertainment, and even support for caregivers. Experience shows that even persons with middle-stage dementia can benefit from reading literature and obtaining information. These guidelines give practical recommendations to librarians and libraries on how to provide mental stimulation with books and other library materials. Their publication also includes suggestions for library staff on how to tailor services to this target population. So let's delve into this part. And again, there's a lot of information and studies on this topic that's been done kind of, I'd say, probably within the last 8 years internationally by IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations. And most of the examples in their study are taken from public libraries in Denmark. ALA is working with this topic too recently, but in my research, everything that I found was the earliest stuff is mostly from IFLA. Their publication, Guidelines for Library Services to Persons with Dementia, is part of a series of guideline publications from the IFLA Standing Committee, Libraries Serving Disadvantaged Persons, LSDP, focusing on persons with specific disabilities or special needs. IFLA has a conference every year. In 2016, a paper titled Reconnecting Persons with Dementia to Their Libraries was presented at the annual conference. This paper is wonderful. I love the concept of reconnecting the dementia sufferer with their library through special programs and outreach to local senior centers and assisted living facilities. I think that's very important. The authors of that paper, Mary Beth Reidner, she's affiliated with the Alzheimer's and Related Dementias Interest Group, Association of Specialized and Cooperative Library Agencies, and the American Library Association. And Linda Gorman, second author, she's also affiliated with Harrison Library, Johns Hopkins Medical Center, Baltimore, in Baltimore, Maryland, presented several case studies of public libraries in the U.S. that had special programs for persons with dementia and their families. So it's a newer topic in librarianship, a newer topic that's getting a lot of attention, but it's a very relevant topic, and it's, as you know, much needed with our population in the United States and specifically in Florida. Definitely needed in Florida. So, according to IFLA's Guidelines to Library Services for Persons with Dementia, libraries can be helpful by evoking pleasant memories that help patrons regain their feeling of identity. Your patrons may have had specific hobbies and interests during their lifetime and during their early life. Books and music can remind them of these interests and stir memories of childhood, youth, working life, and family. Because it's important to remember at one point, the dementia sufferer, they had a career, they had a family, they were working, they had bills to pay, they were caught up in the rat race that we find all ourselves in now. They weren't always feeble, and so this just kind of helps them regain that sense of identity. Okay. Oh, Florida Library. Okay. So some popular library materials for persons with dementia are illustrated books. Persons with dementia, studies have shown they usually like books with big and clear illustrations. Photos. Popular subjects could be animals, flowers, fashion, period fashion even, children, countries, old cars. Sort of like children's picture books with big, clear illustrations are appropriate. Books for reading aloud. Persons with dementia usually enjoy hearing someone read aloud. The text, however, should not be overly verbose. Ideally something short with a simple storyline. Easy to read books for persons with reading difficulties are also appropriate, as they are written in short sentences and have an uncomplicated plot. Essays, fairy tales, and short stories are recommended. Books with jokes, rhymes, jingles from old times, and easy quizzes are popular as well. Books that have familiar poems and songs and that sort of thing. Thematic books for the staff. Certain books can be helpful for care staff in their daily contact with the persons with dementia. In connection with holiday celebrations, Christmas and Easter, theme books may be used as conversation starters about old traditions, holiday meals, decorations, etc. Local history, that's also a very useful library material and resource for dementia sufferers and their families to work with them with. So are biographies of famous persons, books about the past. A public library in Denmark, actually, they had started to make what they call reminiscing kits. Reminiscence kits are helpful in stimulating memories. They would put them together and they'd be like theme-defined, old cooking utensils, actual artifacts, old books, old toilet articles for ladies or gentlemen, school books and supplies, craft items and tools, gardening items, open the kit and the conversation will start immediately just by looking at the things. Reminiscence kit. It's a really cool idea. I'd never heard of it until I read that article in that study. Materials on dementia for staff and caregivers. That's just basically having a selection should also that, or a lot of this could be online, like just knowing where the advanced directive forms are, or the do not resuscitate order, the where power of attorney, that kind of thing, just knowing about that stuff. So materials on dementia, or knowledge of materials on dementia for staff and caregivers, being able to connect them with that. So it's helpful if your library has a broad selection of books and other materials on dementia as part of their general collection. I know that, again, within the last 10 years, a lot of books on diabetes were added to the general collection. So just along the same lines, just having informational reference type resources and adult nonfiction on dementia. Inspired by IFLA's guidelines for library services to persons with dementia, libraries in the United States have begun to take concrete steps to implement the philosophy and principles outlined in their 2007 report. The Alzheimer's and Related Dementias Interest Group, IGARD for short, of the Association of Specialized and Cooperative Library Agencies, a division of the American Library Association, was created in 2013. So that's pretty recent. They were created in 2013 to identify and coordinate the efforts of individual libraries across the country. IGARD is in the process of creating standards for library services to persons with dementia for U.S. libraries. They are seeking input from librarians across the country to document already existing best practices. So here are the current best practices that they have listed for programs for persons with dementia. Tales and Travel Memories, Stories for Life, Memory Cafe and Technology, and so forth. According to ALA's article titled Library Programs for Dementia Clients, a Literature Review by Special Interest Group for Alzheimer's and Related Dementias, the National Institute of Health has determined that creating effective computer training is actually very helpful and instrumental in promoting dementia sufferers' ability to find health information on the internet on their own, and for their relatives as well. National Institute of Health research found that regularly scheduled computer classes, which many of your libraries offer, are particularly helpful for the elderly and those who suffer from dementia. I don't know if dementia sufferers attend your classes. We, believe it or not, we actually have had a few that have come to our computer classes here at DeGroodt, and also to our adult coloring group. Coloring groups are another new fun and popular program that public libraries are offering, and we have several dementia sufferers that come with their home health aide. She brings him and his wife. They come, they color, they love it, and they go back home. So that's another thing. I don't think coloring was on the library programs and tools, but that's also another great program besides the illustrated books, besides just using those kind of resources. Many public libraries, of course, offer computer classes that are open to all ages. You may find that some of your more regular attendees are the elderly. We have them here, of course, Basic 1, which shows you how to use a mouse and a keyboard, very basic. Basic 2, which goes into web links and so forth. We offer them for all ages, but I've noticed that, in fact, most of our patrons that register for these classes are, in fact, seniors. So technology definitely plays an important role in making library materials and info more accessible. So when they know how to use technology, even a little bit, they feel less marginalized, they feel less isolated. We also have here in Brevard, at the branch I work at, DeGroodt Library, we also have, we've been doing it once a month, for the last few months, we have e-reader help, and it's just about 2 hours of the day where we block off the time, and people can come in, bring their Kindles or just different e-readers, and we troubleshoot their device and show them how to use the library's Overdrive resources and ebooks and really just anything that they need with their e-reader. And again, a lot of seniors receive Kindles as gifts, and we're happy to help them use their device to connect to library resources. And we were thinking about maybe going into assisted living facility and doing more than just a story time, like, because some people that reside there, they get Kindles for gifts and then they don't really know how to use them and they kind of just get put away in the drawer. So we're thinking about extending that at the nursing homes as well. Let's see, another, just again talking about library programs, more locally, very locally here in Brevard County, another branch, Palm Bay Library. They provide donations to the local senior center and hospice. There's a staff member, one of my colleagues, Julie Bryant. She runs a book club at an assisted living facility. She reads at 3 different local assisted living facilities. We also have a book mobile here in Brevard County library system that visits assisted living facilities. It even has a little wheelchair ramp so folks can access it and choose books. Sometimes the local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association will use our library branches as a venue for outreach events such as memory testing. So that's just a quick snapshot of some of what we're doing in Brevard County, and I'm sure many of you have similar programs that benefit this population. And there are more to come. As you can see, there's more research. Helpful program guidelines. So if you're considering creating a program for persons with dementia, here are some sources that provide guidelines for library services and programs for dementia sufferers. And a lot of these are perfect for someone to take a relative to if the person cannot attend independently. And again, this topic is new and in development. There's a lot out there, but with regards to a ton of programs, it's kind of new. So this is what's out there now. And funding. Funding can sometimes be an issue. As many of you know, library programs really enrich the community. Some public libraries in Florida offer programming that benefits dementia sufferers. For example, West Florida Public Libraries in Escambia County has a program called Loopy Loomers. It allows participants to make what they call twiddle muffs. It's the cutest thing. You really need to look at it online. It's so cute. People with Alzheimer's and dementias have restless hands, so twiddle muffs are muffs knitted with numerous items on them, like little buttons or tassels, just little things that assist with visual and tactile and sensory stimulation. So the ladies participate in the program, make these twiddle muffs, and they donate them to the local adult daycares. So that's a really cool example of a Florida program. And with regard to funding for these programs and outreach, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS, and again, I apologize for the very lengthy titles of some of these agencies and organizations. They're like 2 sentences long sometimes. So IMLS they provide assistance to libraries and museums in a way. Examples are Lee County. I think it skipped ahead in the slide, but in Lee County in 2010, they received $9,995 for their community conversations group that developed a volunteer corps to provide intellectually stimulating library programs for older adults living in senior residential facilities. Let me see if I can go back to that slide. I don't know if I can. I skipped over it too fast. It was on the previous one. Also, St. Johns County, they received a Library Express, or they received a grant rather for their Library Express outreach project, $222,892. Their Library Express outreach project targeted seniors living in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and adult daycare centers. Seniors at 27 different facilities were able to access services such as books by mail and paperback reading exchange depots. In addition to this, the library established 8 additional deposit collections, totaling 40 to 50 items. So, Institute of Museum and Library Service grants are very helpful expanding programming materials and providing workshops and that kind of thing for library staff. Other grants are American Libraries Association Carnegie Whitney Grant. This grant provides an award that is based on a special fund first established by Andrew Carnegie, and to be eligible, grants are awarded to individuals, local, regional, or state libraries, associations, or organizations, including units, affiliates, committees of the American Library Association. There's also another grant, so as you see, there is funding out here to get something going at your library if you are interested. The Library Services and Technology Act, and, excuse me, I'm going to escape out of this. I really want to go back to that screen. It's useless to talk about it if we don't see it, so bear with me. I apologize. Let's go all the way. Okay. There we go. Okay. Library Services and Technology Act grant. It's the only federal program exclusively for libraries. It is also administered by IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services. State libraries can use the funds to support statewide initiatives and also distribute the funds through subgrants or cooperative agreements to public school, academic, research, and special libraries. So this grant would help you. You could use LSTA funding to help patrons access essential information on a wide range of topics, training on resume development, training on computer classes for the elderly or for those in assisted living facilities, different things. For example, and this is out of state, but it's a good example, the Connecticut State Library uses LSTA funds to provide all state residents with online access to central library and information resources, including databases, catalogs, interlibrary loan systems, and physical delivery of resources. So, mobile book or bookmobile to the senior assisted living facility and whatnot. So you can check out all the ALA website, or you can check out the ALA website, excuse me, I'm getting tongue-tied and thirsty, for more information on these grants. So those are the 3 main ones. Institute of Museum and Library Service grants, American Library Association Carnegie Whitney grant, and the Library Services and Technology Act grant. So there is money out there for you. I read an article in American Libraries magazine titled Stimulating Minds, Libraries Develop Programs to Serve Patrons with Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia. And this article described how Gail Borden Public Library in Illinois developed a program called Tales and Travel using the Technology Act grant. So if you were interested in bringing a similar program to your library, modeled after theirs, Tales and Travel, you could apply for a Library Services Technology Act grant to fund bibliographies for resources for Tales and Travel and to make your program accessible. The citation for this article is on my resources page if you'd like to read more about it. Okay. And Florida Department of State Libraries Division also provides library grants. As many of you know, here's an example of a Florida Libraries grant that's for seniors, but that also benefits dementia sufferers. Back in 2004-2005, Jacksonville Public Library System Seniors Connect at Jacksonville Public Library project received a grant that funded their project that assisted seniors in understanding and utilizing technology via computer training programs and workshops on site, and Senior Center webpage demonstrations that were off-site. So that's just an example of another program that received funding. You can also search on Florida Libraries page projects on that site and see various projects in Florida libraries that were grant recipients if you're interested in really going forward with that. And I'd like to wrap it up by leaving you with some continuing education opportunities on this topic, because as you know, this topic is really relevant right now and developing. There's more and more literature on this and how to create effective programs for dementia sufferers and their families. So in June 23rd, 2017, so in about 6-7 months, ALA is having a Becoming a Dementia-Friendly Library Serving People Living with Dementia in Your Community panel at their annual conference. And there's the registration information. Not sure if I'll go, but I definitely will be reading their website to see if I can get some of the presenters' information after the fact. There are some of my sources used. And as always, I'm here if you need me. Feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. I know a lot of this is very content heavy. Sometimes it's bland to talk about, but I really am passionate about it, and I know it's very important. I see the strain in people's faces when they come in and they're dealing with this and they're just trying to find information. They don't have a lot of money, so it's helpful if we can point them in the right place, and it's also great if we're reaching this population and keeping them connected with the library. Just because they're getting older and ill does not mean that they still can't be connected with their local library. We definitely need to make sure we are creating effective programs in line with national and international standards that serve this patron group. So if you'd like to reach out to me, my contact info is there. I'd love to hear from you, and thank you again for your time.